I see three main risks to Canada's growth in 2014. The first comes from the United States. I'll spell that out in just a moment. Second, resources, or the price of global commodities. And thirdly, from the Canadian housing market. With respect to the US, my own view is that growth is gradually improving, but there are still risks to that growth, as we've seen with the fiscal crisis in America recently. And so, we need to see the US growing more strongly. If there is another fiscal crisis in the early part of 2014, then again we could have some interruption to the US growth trajectory. And of course the US will at some point, probably from 2015 or 2016, be raising rates. So those are slight negatives on the horizon. Second, resources. Global demand for resources is not going to be nearly as strong as it was during the period 2003 to 2008. That was a period where we saw very rapid credit growth in the developed markets, and we saw immensely strong demand from newly industrializing countries like China, India, and Brazil. Personally, I don't believe that will be repeated, and therefore the commodity price outlook is not nearly as strong as it was during that period. Canada, being a big exporter of natural resources, will inevitably be affected by that. And then the third factor, I think, which is a risk for Canada, is some kind of peaking out and weakening in the Canadian housing market. Already house prices have weakened in some cities, and overall house price increases have been pretty mild, but the real problem comes on the liabilities side of household balance sheets. Canadian households are among the most heavily leveraged in the world today because they've been borrowing, building up their borrowing to accumulate homes and so on. So mortgage obligations of Canadian consumers are high. And if you superimpose on that the prospect of increased interest rates and a weakening housing market, then that clearly poses risks for Canadian growth going forward. For 2014, I think the growth rate will be more like 2.5, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, something of that order, benefiting both from the gradual recovery in the US and continued low interest rates and accommodative monetary policy. So I don't expect a surge in growth of the kind that we typically saw in business cycles in the past. I see a much more gradual recovery, but at least an improvement into 2014 rather compared with 2013.